Imagine raising three children alone on the streets with nothing to eat, no home, no hope. And then, one morning, three Lamborghinis stop at your tiny vegetable stall. Sounds impossible? This is the real story of Meera and the three boys she raised against all odds. Before we dive in, smash that like button and subscribe. You don't want to miss this incredible journey from homelessness to unimaginable success. The sun had barely risen when Meera wiped the sweat from her forehead and arranged the few vegetables she had on her tiny, battered stall. Her hands were rough, her body tired, but her eyes burned with determination. This was more than a stall, it was survival. And beside her stood her three sons, Ariv, Rohan, and Kanal. They were now teenagers, but Meera remembered the first day she held them, shivering under a torn blanket, with no roof over their heads. Life had never been kind. A sudden tragedy had taken her husband, leaving her alone and pregnant with triplets. With no family, no money, and nowhere to go, Meera had been forced onto the streets. Nights were freezing, hunger gnawed at their bellies, and danger lurked in every shadow. But Meera promised herself and her children one thing: they would survive, they would thrive, and she would never let the streets take their dreams. The boys grew up on the pavements, learning to be clever, resourceful, and strong. Ariv loved tinkering with anything mechanical: broken radios, old computers, discarded gadgets. Rohan had an eye for strategy and business, always finding ways to sell a few extra vegetables or small trinkets to help their mother. Kanal, the youngest, had a heart that could not be broken. He comforted other street children, shared food, and reminded his brothers of the goodness still left in the world. Meera worked tirelessly, scrounging for food, selling a few vegetables, or making small crafts to sell. She protected her sons from danger, told them stories of heroes who overcame impossible odds, and nurtured their talents, despite the harshness of life around them. People passed by without a second glance, calling her foolish for raising three children in such desperate conditions. But Meera never wavered. She knew that love, courage, and determination could build miracles from nothing. Then came the day that would change their lives forever. As Meera and her sons arranged vegetables at the stall, the roar of engines shattered the morning calm. Heads turned. Phones were lifted. Three Lamborghinis, shiny, loud, and impossible, screeched to a halt right in front of the stall where Meera and her three sons stood. Ariv, Rohan, and Kanal froze, eyes wide. The twins, no, the triplets, clutched their mother's hands, hearts pounding in disbelief. The drivers stepped out, perfectly dressed, their presence commanding attention. But it wasn't arrogance that met Meera's eyes, it was respect. One of them asked softly, "Are you Meera, the woman who raised these boys on the streets?" Meera nodded silently. She couldn't speak. Her heart was racing, memories of hardship flashing through her mind. Cold nights, hunger, endless struggle. And now, here were these strangers, offering opportunity, recognition, and a way to change everything. Another driver handed her a folder. Contracts, proposals, funding, everything they needed to turn her son's talents into something extraordinary. Ariv peeked inside, jaw-dropping. Rohan and Kanal looked at each other, barely believing their eyes. This was no dream. This was reality knocking at the very stall that had been their home, their fortress, and the place where Meera had kept them safe for all those years. Meera held the triplets close, feeling the weight of decades of struggle lift slightly. She realized that every sacrifice, every sleepless night, and every hardship had led to this moment. The Lamborghinis weren't just cars. They were a symbol of hope, transformation, and the start of a life she had never dared to imagine. And little did she know, this was just the beginning. From this tiny corner of the city, the three boys and their mother were about to embark on a journey from homelessness to global recognition, from struggle to triumph, and from invisibility to inspiration for millions. The roar of the Lamborghinis was still fresh in their minds, but life didn't slow down. Meera and her three sons, Ariv, Rohan, and Kanal, knew that opportunity had come knocking, and they had to act fast. The drivers, calm but commanding, explained why they had stopped. They had heard about the boys' incredible talents, inventions, strategies, and creativity born from the streets, and wanted to give them a chance to shine. Ariv, the eldest, had always been obsessed with building things. Broken radios, discarded computers, anything mechanical, he could fix or improve it. Rohan, the strategist, had a mind like a chessboard, always seeing patterns and solutions others missed. Kunal, the youngest, had a heart that understood people, connecting with everyone, sensing needs, and inspiring trust. The drivers could see it all, and they knew that with proper guidance and funding, these boys could change the world. Meera, standing beside them, felt pride and anxiety swirl together. Her sons had survived the streets, but they had never been exposed to the world of business, investors, and opportunity. She squeezed their hands and whispered, "Stay brave. This is our chance, but remember who we are." The boys nodded, a mix of nerves and excitement lighting up their faces. Over the next few weeks, life shifted drastically. The drivers helped set up a small workspace for the boys, equipped with tools, computers, and resources they had never imagined. Arav immediately dove into building prototypes, experimenting with new designs and ideas. Rohan worked on logistics, planning, and strategies, while Kunal focused on connecting with people, pitching their concepts, and learning the art of leadership. Meera continued to manage the stall but also guided them, keeping the family grounded amidst the whirlwind of change. The streets they had once roamed seemed a lifetime away, yet every experience shaped their work. Every hardship, every struggle, every night without food or shelter had taught them resilience, creativity, and grit. Investors watched in awe as the boys' ideas took shape, products and solutions that were practical, innovative, and heartfelt. They weren't just building for profit, they were building for impact, and it showed. Then came the day that would mark the turning point. Meera and the boys were arranging the stall for the morning when they noticed the familiar roar of engines. 3 Lamborghinis, the same ones that had first stopped at their lives, pulled up in front of their humble stall once again. Crowds gathered, astonished at the sight of the luxurious cars parked beside a tiny vegetable stand. The boys froze, remembering that first moment, hearts racing with excitement and disbelief. The drivers stepped out, handing envelopes of funding and letters of collaboration. "You've exceeded every expectation," one said. "Your work, your dedication, your creativity, it's extraordinary, and we want the world to see it." Arav, Rohan, and Kunal stared in awe. This was not just recognition, it was validation. Years of struggle, nights on the streets, and the sacrifices their mother had made were finally paying off. Meera watched silently, tears welling in her eyes. She had raised 3 boys with nothing but love and perseverance. And now, they were being given a chance to step into a world she had never imagined. From this tiny corner of the city, they were about to change their lives and the lives of countless others. That day, the stall wasn't just a place to sell vegetables. It was a launchpad, a witness to transformation, a reminder that no matter how humble your beginnings, talent, hard work, and love could propel you into a future beyond imagination. And in that moment, Meera realized the truth she had always known. Life could change in an instant. One day, you survive. The next, you thrive. And if you never give up, the impossible becomes possible. Weeks turned into months, and life had completely changed for Meera and her 3 sons. Arav, Rohan, and Kunal were no longer the scared, hungry boys who roamed the streets. They were innovators, strategists, and leaders, guided by a mother whose courage had kept them alive against all odds. Meera's tiny vegetable stall had become a hub of activity. The same spot where they had survived on scraps of food was now buzzing with ideas, meetings, and preparations for the boys' first official launch. Arav's inventions were groundbreaking. Small, practical devices that could make life easier for people, from affordable tech solutions to energy-efficient gadgets. Rohan, the strategist, turned their chaotic ideas into structured business plans, while Kunal charmed investors, partners, and supporters with his heartfelt storytelling. Meera watched them, awe in her eyes, realizing that the boys she had raised from nothing were now shaping the future. The media had started to catch on. A local reporter visited the stall, filming the boys as they demonstrated a prototype. From the streets to innovation, the reporter said, her voice full of admiration. Social media exploded overnight. Views, shares, and comments poured in. People were inspired. A mother raising 3 boys in the harshest conditions, And now those same boys were poised to make a global impact. And then came the most cinematic moment yet, the familiar roar of engines. 3 Lamborghinis, gleaming, powerful, and impossible to ignore, screeched to a halt in front of the very stall where Meera had kept her sons safe for years. Crowds gasped. Phones snapped pictures. The boys froze, their hearts racing. It had started as a fantasy, then a possibility, and now it was real. The driver stepped out, smiling. "You've done it," one said. "Your work, your dedication, and the heart behind it all. It's extraordinary. The world needs to see this." They handed envelopes of funding, partnership agreements, and letters of collaboration. The boys, stunned, looked at their mother. Mira's eyes glistened with tears. She had raised 3 sons on nothing but hope, courage, and love, and now the world was finally acknowledging it. That night, as the stall closed and the crowds dispersed, Meera sat on the curb with the triplets. "This is only the beginning," she said softly. "Remember, no matter how high you rise, never forget where you came from." The boys nodded, hearts full. They had survived the streets, but now they would thrive, not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked, ignored, or underestimated. And in that quiet moment, Meera realized something profound. The stall, the streets, the hardship, all of it had led to this. The Lamborghinis weren't just cars, they were symbols of transformation. Proof that courage, love, and perseverance could turn the impossible into reality. From the corner of a forgotten street to the brink of global recognition, Meera and her triplets were rewriting their destiny. And the world was watching. The world had started noticing the story of Meera and her 3 sons. Ariv, Rohan, and Kunal were no longer just the boys who had survived the streets. They were innovators, thinkers, and young leaders with a mission. Invitations poured in. Interviews, conferences, and even international tech expos. But for Meera, it wasn't the fame or wealth that mattered. It was seeing her sons thrive and knowing that every sacrifice had been worth it. The big day came when they were invited to a global innovation conference in New York. The city was dazzling, towering skyscrapers, flashing lights, and thousands of people buzzing with excitement. Meera held her sons' hands as they stepped out of the car, remembering the days they had spent under tattered blankets, scavenging for scraps of food. Now, they were about to step onto the world stage, proving that beginnings didn't define endings. The audience erupted as the boys took the stage. Ariv demonstrated their inventions with precision. Rohan explained strategies for community-based projects and sustainable technology. Kunal shared heartfelt stories of their journey, speaking about resilience, hope, and the power of love. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Social media exploded. Millions of people watched live as the 3 boys who had once been homeless now commanded the attention of the world. Backstage, investors approached with contracts and collaboration offers. The same drivers who had stopped at their stall months ago smiled proudly. "You've exceeded every expectation," one said. "This is only the beginning." Meera stood quietly, tears streaming down her face. She had dreamed of a safe life for her children, but never imagined this: global recognition, opportunities, and influence to inspire millions. She remembered the nights on the streets, the cold, the hunger, and the fear. And now, here they were, living proof that love and perseverance could change everything. That evening, after the conference, the triplets returned home. 3 Lamborghinis waited outside, the same cars that had once marked the beginning of their journey. This time, they symbolized triumph, success, and the world acknowledging the family's incredible story. Meera smiled, holding her sons close. "We survived," she whispered. "We thrived. And now we give back." Even as the fame and wealth grew, Meera kept the family grounded. She opened learning centers, mentoring programs, and shelters for children in need, ensuring that others could experience the same hope and opportunity that had transformed her family's life. Her story wasn't just about success, it was about resilience, love, and the power to change the world. From the streets to Lamborghinis, from despair to global recognition, Meera's journey had reached its emotional peak. But she knew the real legacy wasn't the wealth or the attention. It was the love, courage, and example she had given her sons, and the countless lives she would continue to inspire. Years had passed since the 3 Lamborghinis first stopped at Meera's tiny vegetable stall. The triplets, Ariv, Rohan, and Kanal, had grown into accomplished young men, innovators and leaders, but to Meera, the greatest success was not their wealth or fame. It was their character, resilience, and heart. She had raised them on the streets with nothing but love, and now they were proving to the world that courage and perseverance could overcome any obstacle. The boys' business had expanded globally, and their projects were helping communities in need. Yet Meera insisted on staying grounded. She frequently visited the streets, giving back to children who reminded her of the boys' own struggles. She opened educational programs, shelters, and mentorship initiatives, teaching kids that their circumstances didn't define their future. One afternoon, Meera returned to the old neighborhood where they had once lived. She saw children playing near a small vegetable stall, worn clothes, tired eyes, but curious hearts. She approached, smiling. "Keep going," she whispered. "One day, your life can change. Never give up." The owner of the stall, an elderly woman struggling to survive, looked at her with astonishment. Meera realized this was the true victory, using her story and success to give hope and inspiration to others. Back at home, the triplets often reminded her of her sacrifices. "Mom," Ariv said one evening, "we couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave us everything, even when you had nothing." Rohan and Kunal nodded, their voices trembling with gratitude. Meera's heart swelled. She had never done it for recognition, but in this moment, she knew the depth of her impact. News outlets around the world shared their story. The homeless mother who raised three genius twins. Millions were inspired. Messages poured in from people who had faced adversity, who had struggled, who had thought their lives were hopeless. They wrote about how Meera's courage and the boys' success motivated them to keep going. And yet, Meera stayed humble. She reminded her sons that success was not measured in wealth or fame, but in love, compassion, and the ability to lift others. Their lives had changed, but their mission remained the same: to give hope, opportunity, and inspiration to those who had none. One evening, as the sun set over the city skyline, Meera sat on the porch with Ariv, Rohan, and Kanal by her side. She held their hands, feeling the warmth, the laughter, and the bond that had carried them through the darkest times. "We survived," she whispered softly. "We thrived, and now we give back." From a small street stall to global recognition, from homelessness to Lamborghinis, Meera's journey had become a beacon of hope. Her story reminded everyone watching, no matter how dark the night, no matter how impossible the struggle, love, courage, and perseverance can turn dreams into reality. The woman who had nothing had built everything that truly mattered.